Hey guys, tonight we begin with what is arguably one of the darkest and most grimly effective military tactics ever conceived. We're going back to a time when the world was on the brink of a catastrophe so vast it would change the course of human history. And it all started with a single, disperate, and grotesque idea at the walls of a besieged city. Forget the noble knights in shining armor you see in movies. The reality of medieval warfare was often a grinding, filthy, and deeply unpleasant affair. And tonight's story is the poster child for that truth. It's a tale of greed, desperation, and the day the sky began to rain death in a very literal sense. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations. You've just woken up. Well, woken up is a generous term. It implies you were sleeping deeply in the first place. Which you weren't. Your bed is a pile of straw that's probably more alive with insects than you are. And your back aches in a way that feels ancient and permanent. You are a defender on the walls of the city of Caffa in the year 1346. And your job, for the 10th month in a row, is to stand here and wait to die. The first thing that hits you is the smell. It's a complex and layered perfume that nobody would ever bottle. The dominant note is unwashed. Humanity. A sour cocktail of sweat and fear baked into the wool and leather of hundreds of your fellow soldiers. Beneath that is the low, constant hum of waste from the city below the open gutters. The chamber pots emptied from windows, and woven through it all is the smell of hunger. The stale, almost metallic scent of grain stores that are getting dangerously low. Your breakfast was, as usual, a chunk of bread that could double as a building material, washed down with water that tastes faintly of rust and despair. Your world has shrunk to this narrow stone walkway. To your left, the city, a maze of cramped streets and huddled rooftops. A prison of your own making. To your right, the reason you're trapped here, the enemy, the Mongol camp stretches to the horizon. A sea of yurts and campfires. A sprawling, patient beast that has you by the throat and is in no hurry to finish the job. For months, it's been the same view. The same agonizingly slow routine. The sun crawls across the sky, beating down on your helmet. The flies, fat and lazy, are the only creatures who seem to be enjoying this arrangement. They buzz from the latrine trench to your bread and back again. The true victors of this siege. The boredom is a physical weight. It's a different kind of torture from outright battle. There are no heroic charges. No clash of steel. There is only the waiting. You watch the enemy move about their camp. You watch the clouds drift overhead. You watch the cracks in the stone in front of you. Having memorized them like the face of a loved one, it's the medieval equivalent of scrolling through the same 3 posts on social media for an entire year. You know every detail, and every detail is suffocating. Sometimes, to break the monotony, they use the catapults, the great trebuchets, monstrous wooden arms that swing up and hurl massive stones at your walls. At first, it was terrifying. The deep groan of the winding mechanism, the sudden, violent times, thwomp times of the release. the whistling shriek of the stone as it flew, and the bone-jarring crash as it hit. But after months, even that becomes routine. You learn the rhythm of it. You learn which sections of the wall they're targeting. You learn to brace yourself for the impact, which usually just chips away at the thick fortifications without doing any real damage. It's become background noise, a violent form of punctuation in a long, boring sentence. But today, something is different. There's a strange energy in the Mongol camp, a commotion around one of the largest trebuchets. Soldiers are gathering, but not with the usual efficiency. There's something hesitant, something grim about their movements. You squint, leaning over the parapet, trying to see what they're doing. They're loading the throwing arm. As usual, the heavy counterweight is winched into place. But the payload, it isn't a rock. It's not a boulder painstakingly chiseled from a quarry. It's the wrong shape. It's soft, lumpy, and oddly colored. From this distance, it's hard to make out. Maybe it's a bundle of rags, or an animal carcass. Something to spread filth and disease. They've tried that before. They once launched a dead horse over the wall. It was disgusting, but manageable. The arm swings. The familiar, deep groan fills the air. But this time it feels different. Heavier, more sinister. The bundle is released, arcing high into the blue sky. And as it tumbles end over end, silhouetted against the sun, you see it. It's not a bundle of rags. It is a human body. Time seems to slow down. You watch its grotesque ballet in the air. You can see the limp limbs, the sallow, discolored skin. It's one of their own soldiers, dead from the sickness that you've heard whispers of. The plague that has been sweeping through their camp. An arm flails loosely, as if waving a final, mocking goodbye. For a frozen moment, the body seems to hang at the apex of its flight, a dark blot against the heavens. A corpse has blocked out the sun. Then it comes down. It doesn't crash like a stone. There is no shatter of rock on rock. Instead, there is a sound that will be burned into your memory forever. A wet, percussive, sickening thump times as it hits the stone courtyard behind you. A sound of soft things breaking. A silence falls over your section of the wall. The men around you are frozen. Their faces, masks of disbelief and horror. Nobody screams. Nobody shouts a curse. There is only a profound, collective stillness. You've been trained to fight men with swords and arrows. You've prepared yourself to die by fire or starvation. But nobody prepared you for this. This isn't an act of war. It's an act of desecration. It's a message written in flesh and bone that the enemy has gone somewhere beyond the known rules of conflict, into a realm of pure, nihilistic despair. Another groan from the distance tells you it wasn't a fluke. They're loading another one. The sun feels cold. The sun feels cold. It's a strange thought, but there it is. The same sun that usually warms the stone ramparts and makes you squint as it glints off the Black Sea now seems distant, sterile, like a pale disk in a sick room. But before the sky started raining death, before your new, most pressing concern was the ballistic trajectory of your former enemies, this city was a place worth fighting for, a place worth dying for. A terrible sort of compliment. When you think about it, Let's rewind. Let's push back against the tide of horror and go back to a time when the only things flying through the air were seagulls and curses from frustrated merchants. We need to understand why anyone would bother to lay siege to this particular slab of rock and ambition. Welcome to Caffa. Circa 1340. From a distance, perched on the coast of the Crimean Peninsula, the city is genuinely beautiful. A postcard from the edge of the world, its stone walls, built by the best engineers money could buy, rise defiantly from the shore, promising safety and order. The flags of Genoa, a bold red cross on a white field, snap in the salty breeze. From your ship, you see a jumble of red-tiled roofs, the proud spires of churches, and the forest of masts in the harbor, all shimmering under a warm, life-giving sun. It looks like a jewel, and that's exactly what it is. Caffa is the glittering prize. It's the medieval equivalent of an offshore bank account, a duty-free international airport, and a massive Amazon fulfillment center, all rolled into one fortified Thattergord. Profoundly smelly package. This is the end of the line, or the beginning, depending on your perspective. It's the westernmost terminus of the Great Silk Road, the place where Asia grudgingly unloads its treasures into the waiting hands of Europe. Everything you can imagine, and a lot of things you can't, passes through here. You can literally smell the money before you even dock. The air is a thick, complex currency of odors. There's the sharp, clean scent of pine tar used to caulk the ships, the overwhelming reek of fish being gutted on the docks, the sweet, intoxicating perfume of spices that have traveled for a year across deserts and mountains to get here. Nutmeg, cloves, pepper spices worth more than their weight in gold. Spices that European nobles would kill for just to show off at a dinner party. Underneath it all is the permanent, foundational smell of any medieval city, a potent cocktail of human sweat, animal dung, wood smoke, and questionable sanitation. Step off the boat and into the city proper, and the sensory assault intensifies. The streets are a chaotic, claustrophobic maze. They were not designed for leisurely strolls. They were designed to be defensible and to cram as much commerce as possible into a walled-in space. You are shoulder to shoulder with a sea of humanity. Genoese merchants in their fine woolens stride with an air of arrogant ownership. Greek sailors, with sun-weathered faces, shout in a language that sounds like a heated argument even when they're just asking for the time. Tatar nomads, in from the steppes, move with a quiet watchfulness, their eyes taking in everything. Armenian traders haggle loudly over the price of furs, their voices a constant, percussive rhythm in the city's symphony of noise. The official language is a dialect of Italian, but the real language of Caffa is coin, gold, silver, copper. It doesn't matter, the stamp. As long as it spends. This is a city built on a single, unwavering principle: profit. The Genoese who run this place aren't conquerors in the traditional sense. They don't care about planting flags for glory or converting the locals to their way of thinking. They built an empire of receipts. Their genius was in recognizing the value of a middleman. They would buy low from the east and sell high to the west. They established Caffa as their primary trading post, a fortress of commerce on the very edge of the vast, intimidating Mongol Empire. They controlled the port, the taxes, the warehouses. They were the landlords. the bankers, and the bouncers of this continental crossroads. And oh, the goods. You push your way into the covered market, and the world unfolds before you. Bolts of shimmering silk from Cathay, so smooth it feels like running water through your fingers. Furs from the cold northern forests, sable. Hermine, fox piled high, soft and impossibly warm. There are chests filled with rhubarb, a medicinal root considered a miracle cure for everything from indigestion to a bad mood. There are sacks of grain, mountains of dried fruit, barrels of wine, and in the darker corners, the quiet, desperate trade in human lives. Slaves captured on the steppes, waiting to be shipped off to Mamluk Egypt or gilded cages in Italy. Everything has a price. Everyone has a price. Life here is a frantic gamble. You could be a young merchant's clerk, arriving with nothing but a sharp mind for numbers. And in 5 years, you could be rich enough to buy a villa back in Genoa. You could also catch a stray knife in a dockside tavern over a game of dice, or drink some bad water and die a miserable, anonymous death in a filthy alley. For every success story, there are 100 failures buried in unmarked graves. The city hums with this desperate energy, a relentless pursuit of fortune that papers over the deep cracks of inequality and fear. The Genoese live in sturdy stone houses with courtyards and guards, while you, perhaps a simple dock worker, sleep in a crowded, flea-bitten tenement where privacy is a forgotten luxury. But for all the grime, for all the danger, Caffa works. It is a miracle of logistics and ambition. It is a testament to humanity's desire to get a good deal on spices. The walls seem so strong, so permanent. Standing on the ramparts, looking out over the endless, grassy plains of the steppe on one side and the deep blue of the Black Sea on the other, you feel secure. You feel like you are at the center of the world, a bastion of civilization and commerce, protected by stone, sea, and stacks of gold. This city is a prize. It is wealth, power, and strategy made manifest. And when something is this valuable, other people inevitably want to take it from you. That is the fundamental, boring truth of history. And just beyond the horizon, the people who felt they truly owned this land were starting to get very, very tired of these arrogant Italian merchants and their fortress of profit. And just beyond the horizon, the people who felt they truly owned this land were starting to get very, very tired of these arrogant Italian merchants and their fortress of profit. Let's be clear, these were not simple, disorganized nomads. When you hear the word Mongol, your mind probably conjures a vague, movie-inspired image of fur-clad barbarians screaming as they charge on horseback. And while there was certainly a fair amount of screaming and charging, the reality was far more organized, far more sophisticated, and far more terrifying. This was the Golden Horde, the western branch of the most successful family business in human history, the empire of Genghis Khan. By the 1342nd, they were the undisputed landlords of a colossal territory stretching from Siberia to the Black Sea. This land wasn't just empty grass, it was the superhighway of the world, the Silk Road. And they held the keys, every strand of silk, every pouch of spice, every ounce of gold that moved from east to west paid them a toll. They were less a roving band and more a continent-spanning mafia.
That is it.
and their protection rackets were the most effective the world had ever seen. Imagine you're one of them for a moment. You wake up not to the sound of a rooster, but to the gentle nickering of your horse, tethered just outside your felt tent. Your timescare asterisk. The air doesn't smell of baking bread and sewage. It smells of leather, wood smoke, and the clean, endless wind sweeping across the steppe. Your entire world is in motion. Your wealth isn't counted in gold coins locked in a chest. It's counted in the number of horses, sheep, and cattle that move with you across the land. You have no stone walls because you don't need them. Your defense is the horizon itself. Your home is a circle of felt that can be packed up and moved in hours. Your idea of a city is a temporary gathering of thousands of these circles, a metropolis on the move. You were born in a saddle, taught to ride before you could properly walk, and given a bow that could punch through steel plate from 200 yards away. You are tough, in a way the soft men in the stone city could never comprehend. You can live for weeks on dried milk curds and whatever you can hunt. You see the world not as a collection of properties to be owned, but as a vast pasture to be dominated. And on the edge of times, your time's pasture. On the shore of times, your time's sea. These Genoese merchants have built their stone box. They are soft. They complain about the cold. They smell strange, like old perfume and stale wine. They scribble on parchment and count coins. Useless skills in the real world. For years, you've tolerated them. Their leader, the Khan in this case, a man named Johnny Beg, understands the value of trade. He lets them operate their little port, and in return, they pay their taxes. It's a simple arrangement, like letting a noisy but profitable tenant rent a spare room. But lately, the tenants have been getting bold. They've been acting like they own the house. Now, picture yourself on the other side. You are a Genoese merchant inside Caffa. You wake up to the sound of church bells and the clatter of carts on cobblestone. The air is thick with the smells of the sea. Yes, but also of unwashed bodies, charcoal fires, rotting fish, and the ever-present tang of the communal latrine pit. But you barely notice. You're focused on the numbers. You've got a shipment of nutmeg coming in, which you can sell for a 6,000% markup back in Venice. You're negotiating the price of furs from the north, and you know you can cheat the supplier because he can't read the contract. You wear velvet, even in the heat, because it's important that everyone knows you can afford it. You view the Mongols as a necessary inconvenience. They are your suppliers, your landlords, your security guards, and you hold them in complete contempt. They are crude, illiterate, and don't even have the good sense to live in proper houses. You pay them off with gifts and gold, smile to their faces, and then mock them in Italian behind their backs. You believe your stone walls, your crossbows, and your access to the sea make you untouchable. They can bluster all they want out there on the grass, but they can't touch you in here. Caffa isn't just a city to you, it's an idea. It's the triumph of commerce over savagery, of stone over dirt, of Christian cunning over barbarian simplicity. You are convinced of your own superiority, in the same way you are convinced the sun will rise tomorrow. And this unshakable arrogance is about to become a terminal condition. The spark, as is so often the case, was a stupid, Pointless argument that spiraled out of control. It didn't even happen in Caffa, but in a nearby trading post called Tana. A group of Italian merchants loud, drunk, and full of that signature Genoese confidence, got into a brawl with some local Muslim traders. It was likely about money, an insult, or some other triviality that history didn't bother to record, but it ended with one of the Italians killing a local man. To the Genoese, this was a human resources problem, a regrettable incident. They'd smooth it over. They'd offer some blood money, make a few apologies, and get back to business. They packed up their men and retreated to the safety of Caffa's walls. Assuming the issue would blow over, what they failed to understand was that their landlord, the Golden Horde, had recently converted to Islam. Johnny Beg wasn't just a Mongol Khan. He was now a Muslim ruler. The man his tenants had murdered was one of his subjects and a fellow believer. This was no longer a squabble over market stalls. This was a direct, public challenge to the Khan's authority and his faith. He couldn't just accept a payment and look the other way. He had to respond. He had to remind the tenants who owned the house. And so, the army came. You're a watchman on the walls of Caffa, chewing on a piece of hard bread. At first, it's just a smudge of dust on the horizon. Then the smudge grows. It resolves into individual shapes, thousands of them, then tens of thousands. The earth itself begins to tremble. A low, continuous hum that you feel in your bones long before you can hear it. Soon, the entire northern plain is a sea of horsemen, their banners snapping in the wind. They don't charge. That's not how this works. They simply arrive, they set up their camp, a sprawling city of felt and leather, just out of crossbow range. They dig trenches. They assemble siege engines, massive wooden trebuchets that look like skeletal monsters against the sky. There is no shouting, no immediate rush to violence. There is only a terrifying, methodical purpose. It's the medieval equivalent of receiving an eviction notice, followed by the entire city council, the police department, and a construction crew arriving to demolish your house while you're still inside. The Genoese looked down from their walls, their arrogance curdling into a cold, zinking dread. They had poked the bear, and now the bear had come to tear down their stone cave. One piece at a time, the Genoese looked down from their walls, their arrogance curdling into a cold, zinking dread. They had poked the bear, and now the bear had come to tear down their stone cave. One piece at a time. The great iron-banded gates of Caffa slam shut with a boom that echoes through the streets, a sound of finality. It's a sound that says, "Welcome to the rest of your life." However long that may be, your world, which was once connected by sea lanes to the entire known globe, has now shrunk to the size of this city. The horizon, once a promise of new markets and distant shores, is now just a line of dirty brown Mongol tents, stretching as far as you can see. The sea, your beautiful, liberating Black Sea, is now nothing more than a painted backdrop, a cruel reminder of an escape route that no longer exists. You are sealed in. You are living inside a stone vice. And every day, the handle gets another turn. The first few days are almost festive, in a grim sort of way. There's a surge of communal defiance. You stand on the walls with your neighbors, shouting insults at the Mongol patrols who ride just out of bowshot. Their circular shields and pointed helmets looking like a swarm of malevolent mushrooms. You tell yourselves that ships from Genoa are on their way. You boast that your walls are the strongest on the coast, that your granaries are full for a week, maybe two. You believe it. You wake up each morning to the sound of a bell, not calling you to prayer, but to your post on the wall. Your back aches from a straw pallet that's getting thinner and lumpier by the night. The air is already changing. The crisp sea breeze is now tainted with the smell of too many people and too many animals crammed into too small a space. The city's sanitation system, which was barely adequate on a good day, is now just a series of overflowing gutters. You learn to walk in the middle of the street. The daily routine is a masterclass in monotony and dread. You stand your watch, you stare at the enemy. You go back to your hovel and eat your ration. The bread is the first thing to go downhill. It starts to have more grit in it. More chaff. The portions get smaller. You start eyeing your neighbor's loaf. Doing some quick, desperate math in your head. The water from the cistern starts to taste stale. A bit like whetstone and fear. The Mongols don't launch a full-scale assault. They're too smart for that. A siege isn't a battle. It's a business transaction. They are waiting for the city's will to go bankrupt. So instead of a glorious, bloody fight, you get a slow, psychological dismantling. You get the percussion of terror. Every few hours, day and night, comes the deep times, thwomp times of a trebuchet. The giant catapults the Mongols have assembled. You don't see the rock launch. You just hear the groan of the arm, the snap of the ropes, and then you start counting. You listen for the whistle as it gets closer. A sound that makes the hair on your arm stand up. You pray it's not heading for your section of the wall, for your home, for you. Then comes the crash, a sound like the world cracking open, followed by the tinkle of falling masonry, sometimes screaming, and then silence. Until the next one. It's the medieval equivalent of a dripping faucet. If the drops were the size of a small horse and could obliterate your entire kitchen, weeks turn into months. The bravado is long gone, replaced by a dull, aching hunger and a permanent, low-grade anxiety. Hope is a currency, and you're running out. Rumors become your only entertainment. A merchant swears he saw the sail of a relief ship. The whole city buzzes for a day until you all have to admit it was just a strangely shaped cloud. A guard on the western wall claims the Mongols are packing their tents. It turns out they were just moving their latrine pits downwind. Each rumor is a little spark that dies in the damp, suffocating air, leaving you colder than before. Your social life has been streamlined. You no longer talk about business or gossip about your neighbor's affairs. You talk about food. You describe, in loving detail, the meals you once ate. A roasted chicken, a piece of cheese that didn't have weevils in it, a simple apple. You talk about food. You dream about food. And you slowly begin to see everything and everyone as a potential source of food. The city's cats and dogs disappear first. Then the rats become a valuable commodity. You eye the leather on your own shoes and wonder how long you'd have to boil it to make it soft enough to chew. The city begins to feed on itself. The guards, once protectors, are now just uniformed thugs, making sure no one hoards more than their allotted misery. Old grudges between families flare into open violence over a handful of grain. The sick are no longer tended to with care. They're seen as a liability, another mouth to feed. The weak die quietly in their homes, and no one has the strength or the will to give them a proper burial. The smell gets worse, so much worse. It's the smell of rot, of sickness, of despair. It's the smell of a city eating itself alive from the inside out. You look at your own reflection in a bucket of murky water. Your face is thin, your eyes are hollow, and your skin is the color of old parchment. You are starving. You are filthy. You are trapped. You huddle behind the thick stone walls, listening to the wind howl and the distant thumps of the catapults, and you think to yourself that this is the worst thing that could possibly happen. This is hell. You are wrong. Out there, in the sea of tents, your besiegers are bored, hungry, and getting sick, but they are not suffering from the usual siege complaints of dysentery or malnutrition. A different kind of sickness is creeping through their camp. A quiet, terrifyingly efficient killer, and its arrival has just given their Khan a truly monstrous, history-altering idea. You think the rocks they're throwing are bad. You have no idea what's coming next. You are about to become the unwilling participants in the world's first and most devastating act of biological warfare. The vice is about to get one final, catastrophic turn. But before that final turn, let's step outside the city for a moment. Let's leave the smell of stale bread and crowded humanity behind and walk through the Mongol camp. You are no longer a Genoese merchant counting your dwindling rations. For now, you are one of the besiegers. You are a warrior of the Golden Horde, and you are supremely, confidently bored. The siege has dragged on. Your days are a monotonous cycle of waking up on the cold ground, checking on your horse, sharpening a blade that hasn't seen action in weeks, and eating another meal of tough, greasy mutton. You and 10,000 of your brethren are camped in a sprawling, chaotic city of leather yurts and picket lines that stretches for miles along the coast. The air is thick with the smells of wood smoke, harsh manure, and unwashed men. It's the familiar perfume of conquest, and usually, it's the smell of impending victory. But this time, something is different. The wind off the Black Sea carries a new note, something sharp and sour underneath the usual odors. You ignore it at first. It's probably just a stagnant pond somewhere. At first, the sickness is just a whisper, a rumor carried on that same wind. You hear that a man in a tumen, a unit on the far side of the camp, has come down with a fever. This is hardly news. Men get sick. They drink bad water, eat something that disagrees with them, or simply get a chill from sleeping in the damp air. It's a non-event, the medieval equivalent of someone in the office calling in with a cold. You shrug, pull your thick wool cloak tighter, and go back to complaining about the quality of the fermented mare's milk, which is particularly sour this week. Then, a few days later, the whisper gets a little louder. It's not just one man anymore. It's a dozen, and the details are strange. It isn't just a fever. The men are reporting terrible aches in their limbs, as if they'd been beaten with clubs. And then there are the swellings. Ugly, dark lumps appearing in their armpits and groins, tender to the touch and growing with alarming speed. The camp shamans are called. They burn sacred herbs, chant to the sky, god Tengri, and apply poultices made of things you'd rather not think about. Nothing works. The men only get worse. The whisper is starting to become a worried murmur. You see men from the afflicted units being moved to isolated tents on the edge of the encampment, a quarantine of sorts. A good idea. You think, keep the sickness contained. But it's like trying to contain the wind itself. A warrior from your own unit, a man you've shared meals with for years, wakes up shivering uncontrollably, his teeth chattering so hard you think they might break. By noon, is delirious. By nightfall, his wife is wailing outside their yurt because a dark, egg-sized lump has appeared on his neck. Now, fear begins to creep through the camp. A much more effective invader than any Mongol warrior. It's a cold, quiet dread that settles over the evening fires. The boisterous laughter and storytelling die down. Men sit silently, staring into the flames, each lost in his own private calculation of risk. You find yourself eyeing your comrades with suspicion. Did that man just cough? Is he sweating too much? You become hyper-aware of your own body. Every ache, every itch, every tickle in your throat sends a jolt of panic through you. The communal bonds of the army begin to fray. Men stop sharing their water skins. They sit a little farther apart from one another. The simple act of a friend clapping you on the shoulder is now a potential death sentence. The camp, once a symbol of Mongol power, starts to transform into a sprawling, disorganized hospital. The orderly rows of yurts are disrupted by makeshift infirmaries. The crisp military commands are replaced by the sounds of moaning, of men crying out in pain and delirium, and then comes the smell, the undeniable, sweet, and sickly stench of decay. It's not the smell of a battlefield, which is sharp with blood and iron. This is a slow, rotting smell. It gets into your clothes, your hair, the food you eat. You can taste it on the back of your tongue when you wake up in the morning. The logistics of death become an overwhelming problem. At first, the dead were given proper burials, but soon, there are too many. The grave-digging details can't keep up. Bodies wrapped in hides begin to pile up behind the dunes, awaiting a final resting place. The flies are relentless. The once unstoppable army of the Golden Horde, a force that had leveled cities from China to Hungary, is being systematically dismantled by an enemy it cannot see, cannot fight, and cannot understand. Your comrades, men who face down armored knights and fire lances without flinching, are now dying in their own filth, babbling in fever dreams. Morale, the lifeblood of any army, evaporates. The desire for the riches of Caffa is replaced by a much more primal urge, the desire to simply get away, to ride back out onto the open steppe, away from this cursed, stinking camp. From his command tent, the Khan, Johnny Beg, watches his grand prize just beyond his grasp. Its stone walls mocking him. Inside those walls are terrified merchants. Outside, his own force, the most feared military machine on the planet, is dissolving like salt in the rain. Every day, his commanders bring him the same grim report: hundreds more dead. The siege engines sit half-finished, their builders either sick or buried. The archers who could blot out the sun with their arrows now struggle just to stand. The great campaign is a catastrophic failure. His army is not just losing, it is rotting from the inside out. The whispers of sickness have become a deafening roar of agony and despair. And Johnny Beg knows he is beaten. But a cornered wolf is a dangerous thing. And in the depths of his failure, staring out at the piles of his own dead soldiers, a truly terrible and desperate idea begins to form in his mind. He cannot take the city with his army of the living, but perhaps he could take it with his army of the dead. He cannot take the city with his army of the living, but perhaps he could take it with his army of the dead. You are Johnny Beg, Khan of the Golden Horde, and you are having a very, very bad year. You sit in your command tent, a cavern of silk, and felt that once felt like the center of the world. Now it feels like a coffin. The air is thick and hot, smelling of oiled leather, horse sweat, and something else, something sweet and cloying. The perfume of mass decay that no amount of burning incense can mask. A fly, fat and iridescent green, buzzes lazily near your cup of fermented mare's milk. You don't have the energy to wave it away. Let it have its drink. Soon enough, it will be drinking from you. Outside, the symphony of a successful siege is gone. There are no triumphant war cries, no rhythmic thud of battering rams. Instead, there is a low, constant murmur of misery, a chorus of coughing, the shuffling of feet dragging through dust, and the occasional, sharp wail as another warrior's soul gives up the fight. This isn't war. This is an embarrassment. You are a descendant of the great Genghis Khan. Your ancestors conquered continents. They built mountains of skulls and redirected rivers. They were forces of nature. You are being defeated by a whisper, by a fever, by something you cannot see, cannot stab, and cannot negotiate with. The Genoese inside Caffa, with their smug stone walls, aren't even your primary enemy anymore. Your primary enemy is your own body, and the bodies of your men who are betraying you one by one. Your shamans have been useless. They've chanted until they were hoarse, sacrificed sheep until the ground ran dark, and boiled herbs that smell like a swamp. Nothing. Your generals are just as lost. They can tell you how to flank an army or undermine a wall, but they have no strategy for fighting a pestilence. They just stare at their boots, their faces grim, reporting the day's losses. It feels less like a war council and more like the world's most depressing quarterly business review. The numbers are down. Morale is down. The entire enterprise is on the verge of collapsing, not from a bad strategy, but from a catastrophic failure in human resources. You stand and walk to the flap of your tent, pushing aside the heavy silk. The sun is a merciless hammer in the sky. Your camp, which once stretched to the horizon as a disciplined city of war, now looks like a slum for the dying. The neat rows of yurts are disordered. Men lie listlessly in the slivers of shade, their skin unnaturally pale or mottled with dark, angry blotches. You see the burial details, their faces wrapped in cloth, dragging another slack form toward the ever-growing plague pits on the edge of camp. They don't even bother with ceremony anymore. Just a heave and a thud. Another elite Mongol horseman, a man who could fire an arrow through a bird's eye from a galloping stallion, is now just meat for the worms. It's the waste that truly angers you. All this strength, all this training, all this loyalty, rotting. It's a resource, squandered. an asset, liquidated by an invisible thief, and you look from the plague pits, from the mounds of your dead, back to the city. Caffa. Its walls stand there, impassive, gray, and solid. They mock you. The Genoese inside are probably drinking their clean water, eating their stored grain, and laughing. They think they've won. They think they can just wait you out. Wait for this times thing asterisk to finish the job for them. You have thrown everything you have at those walls. Rocks the size of men, flaming arrows. Your finest warriors all have bounced off or been repelled. The walls are the problem. The walls keep you out and keep them safe. Your gaze drifts back to the burial crew. They heave another body. It's a young man. You can tell by the build. His arm flops over the edge of the pit, the skin of his hand already darkening. And that's when the two problems in your mind, two separate, infuriating equations, suddenly collide. Problem A, a large, growing supply of dead soldiers. Problem B, an impenetrable wall keeping you from the enemy. What if problem A is the solution to problem B? The thought is so hideous, so outside the normal rules of warfare, that it almost makes you laugh. It's an idea born not of strategic genius, but of pure, cosmic spite. You, Jani Beg, have been handed a poisoned cup by the gods. Very well. You will force your enemy to drink from it too. These Genoese merchants hide behind their stone, thinking it makes them immune. They believe the world of suffering is outside, and the world of safety is inside. But this sickness, it doesn't care about stone. It travels on the air. It hides in the blood. It's a curse that, once invited in, becomes a guest that murders the host. If you can't get your living soldiers over the walls, you will send your dead ones. You will send the pestilence itself. You will gift them the very weapon that is destroying you. It's a grotesque epiphany, a moment of terrible, world-altering clarity. All the rules of honor, all the traditions of siegecraft, they evaporate in the heat of your rage and desperation. Why batter a gate with wood when you can poison a well with a corpse? Why throw a clean, honest rock when you can throw a vessel of contagion? This is the ultimate psychological weapon. It's not just about killing them. It's about making them live inside a tomb. It's about turning their sanctuary into a charnel house. They will look up and see not a stone arcing through the sky, but the bloated, blackened body of your fallen warrior. They will see their own future falling from the heavens. The fear alone will be a more potent weapon than any sword. You turn back from the tent flap. The sun at your back. The buzzing of the fly seems louder now, more insistent. For the first time in weeks, the fog of despair in your mind has cleared. It has been replaced by a chilling sense of purpose. You have a new plan. It's vil. It's unholy. It's brilliant. You clap your hands. A sound as sharp as a whip crack in the silent tent. Ahmed scrambles in, his eyes wide with fear. Expecting a reprimand, summon the engineers. You command, your voice low and steady. Bring me the masters of the Trebuchets. The aide nods, bowing low before scurrying out. He thinks you've devised a new way to smash the walls. He is wrong. You're not going to smash the walls. You are going to ignore them. You're going to deliver death. Express mail, right over the top. The order comes down the line, passed from a scowling captain to a weary lieutenant, and finally to you and your crew. It's not shouted, but spoken in a low, almost embarrassed tone. You're to stop gathering stones. The quarry is closed for the day. Your new ammunition is waiting for you over by the plague pits. You stare at your lieutenant, waiting for the punchline. There isn't one. His face is a mask of grim duty. He just points. You've been working this trebuchet for weeks. You call her Kulan, after a particularly stubborn donkey you once owned. She's a magnificent beast of engineering and brute force, a towering skeleton of oak and iron, held together with thick, greasy ropes and a profound sense of resentment. You know her moods. You know the particular groan she makes when the counterweight box is almost full, a sound like a giant cracking its knuckles. You know the exact spot on the winch where the wood splinters catch your glove. You and Kulan have a working relationship, a partnership built on the shared goal of lobbing massive chunks of geology at a wall until one of you breaks. Today, that relationship is about to get complicated. You and the other men in your crew walk over to the designated area. The smell hits you first. It always does. You've been living in this camp for months, and you thought you were used to the symphony of odors that define military life: unwashed bodies, stale cooking fires, the latrine trenches. But this is different. This is a new level of olfactory assault. It's the sweet, cloying stench of decay that gets into your mouth and coats your tongue. It's a smell that has weight, that clings to the back of your throat. The bodies are piled haphazardly, thrown into a shallow pit as if they were sacks of spoiled grain. These aren't soldiers fallen in glorious battle. These are your comrades, your tentmates, men you shared hard bread with just a week ago, now reduced to swollen, discolored lumps. Their skin is mottled with dark patches, and the telltale buboes, the grotesque black swellings in the armpits and groin, are still visible. Flies, fat and lazy, buzz in a shimmering cloud over the pit. The only living things that seem to be thriving here. Your task is simple and utterly profane. You are to take these bodies, your former brothers in arms, and turn them into projectiles. There are no sacred rites here, no prayers for their journey to the eternal sky. Your job is to treat them as you would a stone, weigh them with your eyes, judge their suitability for launch. This one is too fresh, too limp. It might come apart in the sling. This one is too far gone, practically skeletal, not enough mass. You are looking for a grotesque Goldilocks zone of decomposition. Firm, but not too firm. Heavy, but not so heavy. It will strain the throwing arm. It is the most disgusting piece of quality assurance you have ever performed. You and 3 other men grab the first suitable candidate. The body is cold and stiff with rigor mortis, making it incredibly awkward to handle. It's like trying to wrestle a piece of poorly designed furniture. An arm juts out at a strange angle. You push it back into place, and it stays there with a soft, cartilaginous pop. You try not to look at the face. You focus on the task. The mechanics of it. 1 man on each limb. You heave. It is a dead weight in the most literal sense imaginable. Carrying it over to Kulan feels like a parade of shame. You can feel the eyes of other soldiers on you. Their expressions a mix of horror, morbid curiosity, and perhaps a flicker of relief that it wasn't them given this particular duty. You reach the Trebuchet. And now the real problem begins. Kulan's sling is a massive cup of thick, woven rope, designed to cradle a roughly spherical boulder. A human body is not spherical. It has limbs. It has a head. It has a frustrating tendency to be unbalanced. You try to lay the corpse in the sling, but a leg flops out. You tuck it back in, and an arm slumps over the other side. It's like trying to pack an octopus into a shoebox. Someone has the bright idea to use rope to tie the limbs to the torso, trussing the body up like a holiday roast. It's a practical solution that somehow makes the entire affair feel infinitely worse. Once the payload is finally secured in the sling, the real work starts. Your crew grabs the bars of the enormous winches. This is the part of the job that builds the muscles in your back and shoulders. The slow, grinding process of lowering the Trebuchet's massive throwing arm, the counterweight box on the other end, filled with tons of rock and sand, rises slowly into the air. The whole machine groans and creaks in protest. You imagine Kulan is whispering to you, "Are you serious? This is what we're doing now, after all we've been through." You and your crew turn the winches, musclo straining. Each click of the ratchet is a punctuation mark in this sordid sentence. The air grows thick with tension. The Genoese defenders on the walls of Caffa have seen you. They've been watching this whole bizarre process. You can see their small, silhouetted forms, pointing, probably wondering what new madness has seized the Mongol horde. They're expecting a rock, maybe a flaming pot of pitch. They have no frame of reference for what you are about to send them. Finally, the arm is winched all the way down, locked in place. Trembling with stored potential energy, the officer in charge gives a perfunctory nod. No grand speech, no battle cry, just a quiet, grim approval. The man with the mallet stands ready by the release pin. A moment of silence hangs over the field, broken only by the buzzing of the flies and the distant, mocking call of a crow. You step back, your work done. You are no longer an engineer of siege warfare. You are a mailman for the apocalypse. Your hands are filthy, and you suspect no amount of scrubbing will ever make them feel clean again. You look up at the walls of Caffa, then back at the grotesque package nestled in Kulan's sling. You have loaded the engine of pestilence. Now, all that's left is to pull the trigger. From your perch on the battlements, you have an excellent, if terribly monotonous, view of your impending doom. You lean against the cold, salt-sprayed stone of the wall, your crossbow resting beside you. Weeks of this, weeks of watching the same endless sea of yurts, the same columns of smoke from the Mongol cookfires, the same patrols of horsemen circling just out of bowshot. Ziga life, you've learned, is less about heroic clashes of steel and more about a slow, grinding boredom punctuated by moments of sheer terror. It's mostly an exercise in hunger management and trying to find a spot to relieve yourself that isn't already claimed. The sun is high, beating down on the stone, and the air smells of the sea, of fish, and of the thousands of unwashed bodies crammed inside Caffa. It's a familiar perfume. Down in the courtyard, you can hear the dull clang of a blacksmith's hammer and the murmur of voices. Business as usual. Another rock will fly over the wall soon. It will smash into a roof, kill a goat if it's particularly unlucky, and then everyone will go back to complaining about the dwindling wine supply. You've become a connoisseur of the sounds of the Mongol siege engines. There's the sharp crack of the smaller catapults, the low groan of the ballistae, and then there's the deep, resonant creak of the big one, the Trebuchet, the one they call the Whistler. You hear it now, a long, drawn-out groaning, like a giant waking from a nap in a very bad mood. The sound of immense ropes being twisted, of a counterweight being winched into place. All the men along the wall fall silent. Heads turn, eyes squint against the sun, trying to pinpoint the source. There it is. A great wooden arm slowly rising into the sky. A familiar, dreadful piece of geometry. You and the man next to you, a burly Genoese sailor named Matteo, don't even flinch anymore. You just watch. You've even started a small, grim betting pool on which district the next rock will demolish. You've got 2 silver pieces on the tanner's quarter. Then comes the times thwump asterisk, the deep, bass note of the arm being released, a sound that vibrates through the stone, up your boots, and into your teeth. You watch the arm swing up in its devastating arc, and you follow its tip with your eyes, waiting to see the dark speck of a boulder appear against the pale blue canvas of the sky. But something is wrong. The speck appears. Yes, but it's not a speck. It's too large, and it isn't round. It's lumpy, deformed. It tumbles through the air, end over end, not with the clean, predictable trajectory of a carefully hewn stone, but with the chaotic, flailing motion of a discarded doll. It looks like a bundle of rags, trailing strips of cloth. What is that? Matteo murmurs, his hand shielding his eyes. They're launching their laundry at us now. You don't answer. You're frozen, watching this bizarre object climb to the apex of its flight. For a moment, it hangs there, suspended between the Mongol camp and your city. A dark, terrible question mark in the sky. And in that moment, the sun catches it just right. You see a glint of pale flesh. You see a limb, horrifically bent. You see a human head lolling on a broken neck. A collective gasp ripples down the line of defenders. A sound of 100 men realizing the same impossible truth at the exact same time. It's not a rock. It's not a bundle of rags. It's a body. They are firing a person at you. Your brain refuses to process it. It's a level of barbarism, of sheer, nihilistic insanity that warfare, even at its most brutal, isn't supposed to include. You launch rocks to break walls. You shoot arrows to kill soldiers. You don't do this. This is something else. This isn't an attack. It's a desecration. It feels like a violation of some unspoken, fundamental rule of being human. The body begins its descent. It picks up speed, the whistling of its passage through the air becoming a horrifying shriek. Down in the streets, people are finally looking up. Pointing, a woman screams. The tumbling shape grows larger and larger. A grotesque messenger from the world of the dead. You can see the dark splotches on its skin now. The swollen, blackened signs of the sickness that has been ravaging the Mongol camp. Then comes the sound. It's not the sharp crash of stone on stone. It's not a splintering of wood. It is a wet, heavy, final times thump asterisk. A sound of meat and bone meeting cobblestone with terrible force. It lands in the middle of a small market square, not 50 yards from your position on the wall. For a heartbeat, there is absolute, profound silence. The entire city seems to hold its breath. Even the wind seems to die down. Then the screaming begins again. Closer, this time, laced with panic and revulsion. You and Matteo and a dozen other soldiers creep to the edge of the parapet, peering down into the city. The body, or what's left of it, is a broken ruin in the center of the square. It has burst upon impact, a shattered vessel of disease and decay. Citizens are scrambling away, tripping over market stalls, their faces masks of pure horror. Before you can fully absorb the grotesque tableau below, you hear it again. That low, familiar groan from the enemy camp. Then another, from a different direction. You look out over the plains. Not one, but 3, 4, 5 of the great Trebuchets are being loaded. Their crews move with a grim, practiced efficiency. They are not loading stones. In the slings of the great war machines, you can see them placing more of their dead. Another times, thwump times echoes across the field. Another dark shape arcs into the sky. Then another, and another. The sky, which moments ago was just a boring, empty blue, is suddenly filled with these terrible, tumbling projectiles. It's a rain of corpses, a hailstorm of pestilence. Each one is a message, a biological threat, and a psychological weapon all rolled into one. The Mongols couldn't break your walls with stone.
Don't you worry.
So now they intend to poison you from within to make you safe. Fortified city, a tomb. The first thud was a shock. The second is a statement. The third is the beginning of the end. You look at Matteo, his sun-weathered face now pale as parchment. He makes the sign of the cross, his hand trembling. Mother of God, he whispers, what have they done? Down below, the first body lies broken on the stones, but its work is not yet done. From its shattered form, a silent, invisible army is already beginning to stir. An army of fleas, of bacteria, of microscopic death. The stone walls of Caffa, your great shield against the world, have just become the sealed lid of a petri dish, and you are all trapped inside. The stone walls of Caffa, your great shield against the world, have just become the sealed lid of a petri dish, and you are all trapped inside. For a long moment after that first horrifying thump, there is only a stunned silence. It's a silence broken by the distant, mocking laughter of the Mongol army. The guards on the parapet, men who have faced down arrows and siege towers, simply stare. They look at the broken thing that was once a man, splayed out in a courtyard below. They look at each other, their faces pale under layers of grime. Was that it? Was that the grand new strategy to throw your own dead at us? It feels less like an attack and more like a profound, grotesque insult, an act of pure, nihilistic contempt. Down in the streets, you and the other citizens rush to see what caused the commotion. You push through the crowd, smelling the familiar city odors of sweat, wood smoke, and desperation. And then you see it, Your mind struggles to process the scene. It's not a boulder. It's not a bundle of flaming pitch. It's a human body, twisted into a shape it was never meant to hold. Panic, at first, is a low murmur. It's a contagion of whispers. They're trying to break our spirit. One man says, trying to sound brave. It's a scare tactic. A woman mutters, pulling her children closer. The city's leaders, desperate to maintain order, send out work crews. Their orders are simple and grim. Get rid of it. But how you watch as a handful of men, their faces wrapped in scraps of cloth, approach the body. They carry long poles, prodding at the corpse as if it were a venomous snake. They don't want to touch it. There's an instinctual revulsion, a deep, primal understanding that this is wrong. This is unclean. Eventually, with immense effort, they manage to heave the mangled remains onto a cart. They do the same for the next one, and the one after that. The trebuchets keep firing. The sky keeps delivering its awful rain. The work crews have a singular destination, the harbor. Their solution, born of panic necessity, is to dump the bodies into the Black Sea, to let the water wash away the sin. You watch them trundle the carts down to the docks and unceremoniously tip the dead into the cold, gray water. It feels like a temporary fix, like sweeping a pile of horrors under a vast, watery rug. For a day or two, it almost seems to have worked. The Mongols are still out there, but their bizarre tactic seems to have failed. Life, or the siege version of it, continues. But then, the smell begins. It's a smell that defies description. A sweet, heavy stench of decay that creeps into everything. It's not the familiar smell of the city's unwashed masses or its overflowing gutters. This is different. This is the smell of a deeper, more profound rot. It seeps through the cracks in your door. It clings to your clothes. You taste it in your gritty bread and stale water. The bodies they threw into the harbor have not simply vanished. They float. They bob against the hulls of the ships and nudge against the docks, slowly dissolving, poisoning the very water that surrounds your sanctuary. Fear begins to change its shape. The enemy is no longer a man with a bow on the horizon. The new enemy is the air you breathe. It's the fly that lands on your crust of bread. It's the rat that scurries past your feet in the dark. The city, once your fortress, now feels like a cage designed to hold in the filth. You start to look at your neighbors differently. A cough, once a minor annoyance, now makes everyone in the vicinity flinch. A bead of sweat on someone's brow looks like the first sign of fever. The medieval version of contact tracing is simply seeing someone stumble and ensuring you walk down a different alleyway for the next week. The city's governor and its priests try to maintain calm. They call for public prayers. For fasting, they burn incense and fragrant herbs in the streets. A pathetic attempt to battle the overwhelming stench of death with the scent of piety. Your local physician, a man whose primary medical tools are a chart of the zodiac and a rusty knife for bloodletting, assures everyone that the sickness in the Mongol camp is caused by an imbalance of their humors, brought on by poor moral character. It is, he insists, not something that could possibly affect good, God-fearing citizens. He is, of course, catastrophically wrong. It starts with a dock worker, a man who helped dispose of the first bodies. He complains of a headache and a chilling cold that no blanket can warm. By evening, he is delirious with fever. The next morning, his wife finds a swollen, dark lump in his armpit, tender to the touch and the size of a small apple. Within a day, he is dead. His wife is sick 2 days later, then their children, then their neighbors. The whispering sickness from the Mongol camp is no longer just a rumor. It is inside the walls. It has a name now. Whispered in terrified tones, the pestilence. Panic is no longer a murmur. It is a full-throated scream. The fragile social contract of the besieged city disintegrates overnight. Families barricade themselves in their homes, refusing to answer the door even for their own kin. The market square, once the heart of the city, becomes a ghost town. The only people in the streets are the desperate, the dying, and the dead. Work crews, now terrified for their own lives, refuse to collect the bodies piling up inside the houses. The city begins to eat itself from the inside out. You are no longer fighting one siege, but two. Outside the walls is Jani Beg's army, a patient, visible predator. But inside, a far more efficient killer is at work. It needs no siege engines, no ladders, no swords. Its army is invisible, carried on the backs of fleas that hop from rats to humans in the squalid, crowded conditions. The very filth that was a normal part of your life, the straw on the floor, the garbage in the street, has become a network of highways for a microscopic invader. The Mongols don't even need to fire their trebuchets anymore. Their work is done. They can simply sit and listen. They can hear the church bells tolling constantly. Not for victory, but for funerals. They can hear the screams thin out as there are fewer and fewer people left to scream. The great prize of Caffa, the glittering jewel of the Black Sea, has become its own crematorium. The fear of starvation, which once dominated your every waking thought, has been replaced by the absolute certainty of a much uglier death. There is no hope of rescue. There is no hope of victory. The only thought left, the only flickering ember of hope in a city of death, is escape. But escape is a complicated idea. You can run from an army. You can, perhaps, tunnel under a wall or slip past a sleepy guard in the dead of night. You can build a boat and sail away from a city under siege. But how do you escape a siege that is already moved inside your own body? How do you run from an enemy that is already multiplying in your blood? The catapults have fallen silent. The rhythmic times, thump, wump, splat times that had become the city's grim heartbeat for weeks has ceased. At first, this silence is a relief. You wake up one morning and the air isn't vibrating with impending doom. You can hear birds again. Or at least you think you can. But the silence that follows is heavier, more suffocating than the noise ever was. The Mongols aren't attacking because they no longer need to. Their work is done. They delivered their weapon. And now they are simply waiting for the city to die from the inside out. The invisible siege has begun. It starts not with a bang, but with a shiver. A dock worker, a man you've seen 1,000 times hauling crates of wine and silk, complains of a sudden chill. Even though the Black Sea sun is warm, he wraps his cloak tighter, his teeth chattering. By evening, he's burning with a fever so hot you could warm your hands on his forehead. The next day, you see his wife weeping outside their small, shuttered home. You don't see the dock worker again. Then it's a baker's apprentice. Then a guard from the western wall. Then a whole family in the room above the tannery. The pattern is a terrifying, creeping whisper. At first, you tell yourself it's just Siga sickness, bad food, bad water. The constant stress, it's enough to make anyone ill. You rationalize it. You have to, because the alternative is too horrifying to contemplate. But then you start to notice the details, the small things that betray a much larger, more monstrous truth. You see a rat, fatter and bolder than usual, scurry across a lane in broad daylight, unafraid, and you notice a tiny black speck on its fur jump. A flea, an utterly insignificant creature, the kind you've brushed off your clothes 1,000,000 times. You don't know it yet. But that little insect is a more effective soldier than any 10,000 Mongol horsemen. It is a siege engine shrunk to the size of a grain of sand, and it has just declared war on your entire world. This enemy fights a two-front war. The first attack is the one you hear about in hushed, terrified tones. It comes from the bite of that flea. A day or two after the fever begins, a swelling appears, a lump, hard and hot and agonizingly painful, usually in the groin or the armpit or on the neck. It's called a bubo. It's the size of a pigeon's egg. Then a fist. It's your body's lymph nodes screaming as it's overwhelmed by an invading army of bacteria. The skin over it turns a dark, purplish black. That's where the name comes from. The Black Death. Once this token appears, your odds are, to put it mildly, not good. You have a few days of delirium, agony, and vomiting blood before the end. But that's the slow version. That's the plague taking its time. In the close, suffocating quarters of Caffa, the disease has evolved. It has learned a new and far more terrible trick. It has gone airborne. A sick man coughs. He doesn't cover his mouth. That's a delicate custom for some far-off future. He just coughs, sending a fine, invisible mist of droplets into the cramped, stale air of a tavern, a home, a church. In that mist are the same microscopic assassins that the fleas carry, but now you don't need a bite. All you have to do is breathe. This is the pneumonic plague. There are no buboes, no warning signs, just a fever, a cough, and then, with breathtaking speed, your lungs liquefy. You drown in your own fluids. And with this version, your chances of survival aren't just bad. They are 0, 100% fatal. The city of Caffa, once a bustling hub of commerce, becomes a perfect laboratory for this new, faster death. Your idea of social distancing is sleeping only 4 people to a straw mattress instead of 6. You share your cup, your bowl, your air. Every breath you take is a breath someone else just exhaled. The invisible siege doesn't need to break down the gates. You've opened every window and door for it. The social fabric of the city doesn't just fray. It dissolves in a matter of days. The guards on the walls stop watching the Mongol camp. They watch each other, flinching at every cough. The priests offer prayers to a god who appears to have put his celestial phone on silent. They preach that this is a divine punishment for sin, which isn't very helpful. They recommend flagellation and repentance, which does nothing for a bacterial infection, but does make your last few days on Earth even more miserable. Soon, the normal sounds of the city are gone. The blacksmith's hammer is still, the merchant's call is silent. The laughter of children is a forgotten memory. It's replaced by a new soundtrack, the hacking cough that echoes in the narrow alleys, the sudden wail of a new widow, the low moan of the dying, and, underneath it all, the incessant, maddening buzz of flies. The smell is overwhelming. It's the smell of sickness, of unwashed bodies, of human waste. And overlaying it all, a sweet, cloying odor of decay that clings to the back of your throat. You bar your door. You stuff rags in the cracks around the windows. But it's a futile gesture. The enemy is already inside. It's in the flea on the dog, sleeping by your hearth. It's in the air you're rebreathing. It's in the man groaning on the floor next to you, your brother, your father, your son, whose every breath is a puff of poison. Trust evaporates. Fear becomes the only currency. The neighbor who once shared bread with you is now a vessel of contagion. The child you once held in your arms is now a source of mortal terror. The Mongols out on the plains no longer need their trebuchets. Johnny Beg's grotesque strategy worked better than he could have ever imagined. He wanted to use pestilence to demoralize the city and force its surrender. But he didn't just throw bodies over a wall. He uncorked a biological hurricane in a shoebox. He has created a self-perpetuating weapon, a horror that now fuels itself. The stone walls, once your greatest protection, are now the sealed lid of a tomb. There is no escape from the Mongols outside. But that no longer matters. The only thing that matters now is escaping the city itself, escaping the air, escaping the very presence of other people. The only thing that matters now is escaping the city itself, escaping the air, escaping the very presence of other people. The thought starts as a whisper, a treasonous idea in the back of your mind as you huddle in your small, dark room. But soon, the whisper is a shout, a primal scream shared by thousands. The gates are sealed. The walls are a prison. But the harbor is a door. And so the stampede begins. It's not an orderly evacuation. There are no designated routes, no muster points, no one checking your papers. This is the human spirit, stripped down to its rawest form, blind. Unreasoning panic. You grab what you can carry, which is almost nothing. That silver candlestick from your grandmother, leave it. The chest of silks you've been saving for a daughter's dowry, it's just weight. You take a pouch of coins, a stale loaf of bread, and the clothes on your back. Your wealth is now measured in how fast you can run. The streets are a nightmare river of shoving, screaming bodies. You see your neighbor, a portly baker you've known for years, get knocked down and trampled, his face disappearing under a surge of frantic feet. You don't stop to help. You can't. To stop is to be swallowed by the current. The air is thick with the metallic tang of fear sweat and the groans of the dying who have collapsed in the gutters. The goal is the dock, the sea, the promise of an escape you don't deserve, but will kill for. You finally burst out onto the wharf, and the scene is even worse. It's a tangled mass of humanity clawing its way toward a handful of merchant galleys, captains and their crews, armed with clubs and knives, are beating people back. A spot on a ship is now the most valuable commodity in the world, worth more than all the spices and furs in Caffa combined. You see a wealthy merchant offering a bag of gold to a sailor, only to have the bag snatched and be thrown back into the crowd. Money means nothing here. Only force and desperation work. You spot a smaller trading cog. Its gangplank already being raised. You don't think. You just move. You shove a crying woman aside, elbow a boy in the face, and make a desperate leap, your fingers catching the rough, splintery edge of the plank. A sailor raises a club to smash your hands, but your eyes meet his for a second. He sees the same animal terror that lives in his own heart. Hey, has he done this? And that hesitation is all you need. You haul yourself over the side, landing in a heap on the deck, your lungs burning, your knuckles bloody. You've made it. You are one of the chosen few. Congratulations. You've just won a ticket on a floating tomb. The ship is dangerously overloaded. You are herded below deck into the cavernous, stinking hold. The darkness is almost total, punctuated by a few thin beams of light from the grates above. The air is a thick soup of odors: bilge water, tar, unwashed bodies, vomit, and the faint, sweetish smell of sickness. You know all too well. You are crammed shoulder to shoulder with strangers, all of you sharing the same wide-eyed, haunted look. A man next to you begins to cough, a dry, racking sound that makes everyone instinctively recoil, creating a small, impossible space around him. A baby wails incessantly. Someone else is quietly weeping in a corner. This isn't a rescue. It's a cargo hold of misery. But as the ship lurches and you hear the rhythmic groan of the oars pulling you away from the dock, a sliver of hope worms its way into your heart. You escaped. You actually escaped. You picture the open sea, the clean, salt air washing the stench of Caffa away. You imagine landing in Genoa or Venice. A refugié? Yes, but a living one. You can start again. As you sit there in the dark, congratulating yourself on your Darwinian victory, you fail to notice the tiny black speck that leaps from the hem of your wool tunic to the man sitting beside you. You don't feel the almost imperceptible bite on your ankle. In your desperate focus on escaping the visible monster, the rotting bodies, the fearsome Mongols, you have completely overlooked the invisible one. You are fleeing the plague, but you've packed it in your luggage. It's in the folds of your clothes. It's in the bloodstream of the man coughing next to you. And, most importantly, it's in the fleas nestled in the thick, black fur of the rats that scurried up the mooring lines, mistaking your ship of fools for just another floating pantry. These rats are the true passengers, the masters of this voyage. They don't know they are the vanguard of an apocalypse. They're just looking for a dark corner and some spilled grain. The ship is a sealed container, a perfect incubator. All the ingredients are here: a dense population of weakened hosts, poor sanitation, and the delivery mechanism itself, happily breeding in the shadows. The very thing you fled from is now your shipmate. Locked in the dark with you, the Mongols, watching from the hills above Caffa, no longer need to fling their dead. The desperate survivors are now doing the work for them. Each ship pulling away from that doomed harbor is not a vessel of hope. It is a biological weapon, armed and aimed at the heart of an unsuspecting world. You have escaped the city-sized tomb only to board a coffin-sized one, pointed directly at home. You have escaped the city-sized tomb only to board a coffin-sized one, pointed directly at home. The salt spray that hits your face feels cleansing at first, washing away the dust and grime of Caffa. The first few days at sea are a blur of relief. Behind you, the smoke from the Mongol siege camp is a smudge on the horizon. Then nothing. Ahead, there is only the vast, indifferent blue of the Black Sea. You are one of the lucky ones, or so you tell yourself. The ship is a Genoese galley, long and narrow, built for cargo and speed, not comfort. You are packed in with dozens of other refugees, sharing space with bales of silk, barrels of spices, and the ship's permanent, unseen residents, the rats. At night, you hear them, a frantic, scratching symphony beneath the floorboards. During the day, you see them, bold and sleek, darting between coils of rope. They are part of the ship, as much as the mast or the rudder. You pay them no mind. You have bigger things to worry about, like the gnawing in your stomach and the chill that seems to have settled deep in your bones. The food is what you'd expect: hard tack biscuit, so dense it could be used as a weapon, and salted fish that makes you thirstier than you were before eating it. The water, stored in wooden casks, already has a green, swampy taste to it, but it's better than starving in a besieged city. You reason. Everything is better than that. You find a small space to call your own in the hold, a cramped, perpetually damp corner where the air smells of bilge water, old sweat, and creeping despair. Then comes the first cough. It's a man from the docks, someone you vaguely remember helping load a crate. It's a dry, hacking sound that echoes in the close confines of the lower deck. No one thinks much of it. Sickness is a constant companion on any sea voyage. The damp air gets in your lungs. The poor food weakens your constitution. It's just a cough. Then the next day, the man is shivering, wrapped in every spare scrap of wool he can find, yet complaining of a burning fever. He babbles about the fires of Caffa, his eyes wide and unfocused. The captain orders him to be isolated near the bow, as far from the others as possible, on a vessel where privacy is a laughable fantasy. You try to ignore it. You focus on the rhythmic creak of the ship's timbers, the snap of the sail in the wind, the endless gray-blue water, but you can't ignore the smell that begins to drift from the bow. It's sweet and rotten, the smell of meat that has turned. Then, 2 days later, the man is dead. His shipmates, with grim, practiced efficiency, bind his body in a weighted sailcloth. There's no priest, no ceremony, just a few muttered words, a heave, and a dull splash. The sea takes him without comment. 1 death is a tragedy. 2 is a coincidence. The third, a young woman who had been tending to the first man, is a pattern. She doesn't last 2 days. The fever takes her so fast, she barely has time to scream. When they move her body, you see it, a dark, swollen lump unter her Arm, the size of an orange, hard and angry. Bubo, a collective shudder runs through the ship. It's not a shipboard fever. It's not the flux. It's the whispering sickness. The Mongols' curse. It didn't stay behind the walls of Caffa. It bought a ticket. Now the real siege begins. One far more terrifying than the one you left. There are no walls to hide behind. No escape. Your floating piece of wood is now a sealed laboratory for the plague. Paranoia becomes the new currency. A shipmate stumbles, and everyone flinches away. A cough from the darkness sends a ripple of fear through the hold. You start eyeing your neighbor, the person you shared your biscuit with yesterday, as if they are a ticking bomb. Are they breathing too heavily? Do their eyes look glassy? You find yourself subconsciously checking your own neck, your own groin, for the telltale swelling that signals your turn is next. The ship's manifest did not list pestilence as cargo, but it is now the most prominent item on board. The crew begins to fall. The strong-backed oarsmen who rowed you out of the harbor now slump over their benches, too weak to lift an oar. The sailors who expertly climbed the rigging now struggle to even stand. Soon, there are barely enough healthy men to manage the sails. The ship, once a swift vessel, now drifts sluggishly, at the mercy of the currents. A ghost ship, crewed by the dying. The burials become a daily ritual. Heave, splash, another soul delivered to the deep. You stop learning names. What's the point? They are just the next body to go over the side. The sharks begin to follow the ship, dark fins cutting through the wake. A patient, circling escort. They know a reliable meal when they see one. And all the while, down in the hold, the other passengers thrive. The rats, utterly immune, scurry over the silk and through the grain. They feast on scraps, breed in the darkness, and carry in their blood the architect of all this misery. Their fleas, the tiny, hopping agents of doom, travel with them. They are the true stowaways, while you and the other humans are locked in a desperate, losing battle for survival on the decks. The real invasion force is multiplying below, waiting. They are a biological time bomb, ticking down the nautical miles until they reach a new, untouched world. You sail through the Bosphorus, past the glittering city of Constantinople, a beacon of civilization you dare not approach. You are a pariah vessel, a leper ship. To make port would be to invite execution, or to be burned at anchor. So you press on into the Aegean Sea, the Greek islands passing like hazy, unattainable paradises. The goal is singular home, Genoa, or at least Italy, Sicily, perhaps a safe harbor. The desperate hope is that someone there will have a cure, that the clean air of home will burn away this sickness. It is a child's wish, a foolish dream, but it is the only thing that keeps you hoisting the sail and scrubbing the deck. The survivors are gaunt, hollow-eyed wraiths. You are no longer merchants or refugees. You are carriers. This isn't a voyage home, it's a delivery. With every creak of the mast, with every league of sea that passes beneath your hull, you are bringing a nightmare to the doorstep of an unsuspecting continent. Far ahead, just beyond the curve of the earth, lies Sicily. Its people are going about their lives, blissfully unaware that a wooden horse, filled not with soldiers but with microscopic death, is steadily, silently, drawing near. Arve of the earth lies Sicily. Its people are going about their lives, blissfully unaware that a wooden horse, filled not with soldiers but with microscopic death, is steadily, silently, drawing near. You are there, in the port of Messina, in the autumn of 1347. You are not a noble or a knight. You're just you. Perhaps you're mending a fishing net, your fingers calloused and smelling of brine. Perhaps you're hauling a barrel of wine up a cobblestone street, your back aching in a way that feels ancient and permanent. The air is a familiar cocktail salt from the sea, the sharp tang of rotting fish heads in a gutter, dust, sweat, and the faint, ever-present perfume of animal dung from the nearby market. It's not pleasant, but it's the smell of home. It's the smell of being alive. Life is a predictable rhythm. You wake when the sun insists. You work until your body begs you to stop. You eat your gritty bread and watery stew. And you sleep. Your concerns are small and immediate. Will the rains come too soon? Is the price of olive oil going up again? Did your neighbor's goat get into your vegetable patch? The vast, terrifying world of Mongol armies and distant sieges is nothing more than a fantastical rumor. A story told by a drunken sailor that you only half believe. Then, one October morning, you see them, 12 of them, Genoese trading galleys, slicing through the waves. This is usually a good sign. Ships mean goods, news, coin, and a break from the monotony. People gather at the docks, a murmur of excitement rippling through the crowd. But as the ships draw closer, the excitement curdles into confusion. Something is wrong. Normally, a ship arriving in port is a loud boisterous affair. Sailors would be shouting from the rigging, waving, hurling friendly insults at the dock workers. These ships, however, glide in with a chilling silence. Their sails are tattered, their movements clumsy, as if they are being steered by ghosts. You squint, shielding your eyes from the sun. You can't see anyone on deck. It's a ghost fleet, manned by a phantom crew. When the first galley bumps against the pier, a few figures finally emerge from below deck. You feel a collective gasp from the crowd around you. These are not the hardy, sun-bronzed sailors you're used to. These men are walking skeletons. Their skin is sallow, their eyes are wide with feverish delirium, and they are covered in strange, dark blotches. You see hideous swellings on their necks, in their armpits, and in their groins. Black and purple boils the size of an apple. Some men stumble and fall right there on the deck, too weak to stand. Others lean against the railings, moaning words that make no sense. An old sailor next to you makes the sign of the cross and mutters about a curse. The port authorities, men whose entire job consists of levying taxes and arguing about docking fees, are utterly paralyzed. There is no manual for this. This isn't a problem you can solve with a bribe or a sternly worded letter. They stare at the dying men, at the bodies you can now see lying motionless on the decks. And they do nothing. What could they do? The concept of contagion, of tiny invisible things causing sickness, is centuries away. To them, this is the work of God, or the devil. It's a miasma, a foulère, a divine punishment for some unknown sin. While the humans stand frozen in horrified fascination, the true conquerors disembark. They are small, silent, and utterly indifferent to human panic. Down the thick mooring ropes they scurry, a river of brown fur, rats, Dozens, then hundreds of them, pouring from the holds of the ships. They've been feasting on the ship's grain and, more recently, on the dead. Now, they melt into the shadows of Messina's warehouses, into the filth of its alleyways, into the dark, warm spaces beneath your very floorboards. And on them, clinging to their fur, are their own passengers' fleas, bloated with infected blood. The invasion is silent, effortless, and complete before anyone even knows a war has been declared. For a few days, the city exists in a state of dreadful suspense. The sick Genoese sailors are tended to by priests and family members who quickly develop the same fevers, the same grotesque swellings. The horror deepens. This isn't just a strange sickness from the sea. It's a fire that jumps from person to person with terrifying speed. Finally, the city's leaders make a decision, with the kind of decisive action that is always taken far too late. They order the ghost ships out of their harbor. The surviving sailors, weeping and cursing the Sicilians, are forced to cast off and drift back out to sea, carrying their plague with them. You watch them go, and a fleeting sense of relief washes over you. The problem has been expelled. The door has been shut. But the door was never the ship. It was the rat hole in your wall. A week later, you wake up with a shiver you can't shake. Even though the room isn't cold, your head feels like it's full of hot sand. When you get up, a sharp pain shoots through your groin. And when you touch the spot, you feel a tender, growing lump. It's nothing. You tell yourself, you must have pulled a muscle lifting that crate yesterday. But by evening, the fever is raging. The world dissolves into a nightmare of sweating, shaking, and terrifying visions. Your family looks at you with a new kind of fear. The next day, you hear a scream from your neighbor's house, then another down the street. The city of Messina has become a copy of the city of Caffa. The invisible siege has begun. The expelled ships, meanwhile, did not simply vanish. They became floating vessels of pestilence. Desperate for a safe harbor, they limped their way up the coast of Italy. Some ports, having heard rumors from Messina, turned them away with threats. But eventually, they arrived at their home port, the proud, wealthy city of Genoa. Perhaps there, they thought they would find mercy. They found none. Genoa, too, drove them away. But not before some of the crew slipped ashore. Not before more rats scurried down more ropes. From Genoa, the horror spread to Venice. Another ship brought it to Marseille in France. Every major trade route, every artery that carried wealth and prosperity throughout Europe, was now a superhighway for the plague. The doors had not just been swung wide open, they had been ripped from their hinges and burned for firewood. Europe, a continent of walled cities built to withstand armies of men with swords and spears, was completely, laughably, defenseless against an enemy it could not see, carried ashore by the very commerce that was its lifeblood. The Black Death had arrived, and it was ready to feast. And Spears was completely, laughably, defenseless against an enemy it could not see, carried ashore by the very commerce that was its lifeblood. The Black Death had arrived, and it was ready to feast. At first, It's just a rumor, whispered on the docks. A sailor from a Genoese galley has a fever, then another. They develop strange, dark swellings in their armpits and groins, the size of an apple, hard and painful to the touch. They shiver, they vomit, and within a few days, they are dead. Their skin takes on a bruised, blackened hue, as if death itself has stained them from the inside out. You hear the stories and you dismiss them. Sailors are always dying of something. The sea is a harsh mistress, and port cities are full of strange fevers. It's nothing. Then, it's not nothing. The dock worker who unloaded the spices from that ship feels a chill he can't shake. The tavern owner who served the sailors a final, watery ale finds a lump while washing. The sickness slithers off the docks and into the tight, winding streets of your city. And your city, you realize, is a perfect little terrarium for growing death. You've never thought about it before, but now you see it with horrifying clarity. Medieval sanitation was less a practice and more an abstract, philosophical concept. The streets are your sewers. You toss your household waste, your rotting food, and the contents of your chamber pot right out the window, adding to the thick, foul-smelling sludge that coats the cobblestones. The air is heavy with the stench of human life, animal dung, and decay. It's a paradise for rats. And on those rats are the fleas, the tiny, silent horsemen of this new apocalypse. One morning, you wake up and your head is pounding. A strange, unnatural coldness has settled deep in your bones. A cold that no blanket can warm. You tell yourself it's just the damp. The straw in your mattress is probably molding again. But then the fever hits. It's a dry, crackling heat that feels like your blood is boiling. You become delirious, muttering nonsense. As the world swims in and out of focus, your family watches you. Their faces a mixture of pity and a new, cold emotion, fear. Then you feel it, a dull ache under your arm, or perhaps high on your inner thigh. You reach down, your fingers trembling, and discover a tender, swelling lump, the bubo, and in that moment, you know, everyone knows what it means. It's not a symptom, it's a verdict, a death sentence delivered by your own body. There is no trial, no appeal. You have been chosen for the harvest. Panic doesn't even begin to describe the mood. It's a complete unraveling of the social fabric. Doctors, the few that exist, are useless. They arrive in their strange, beaked masks, stuffed with herbs to ward off the bad air. They look more like terrifying, pagan bird gods than healers. Their cures are a collection of medieval superstitions that are as useless as they are painful. They might try to lance the bubo, a procedure that likely just spreads the infection further. They'll bleed you, weakening you when you need your strength most. They'll prescribe potions of crushed emeralds or have you sniff a bouquet of expensive flowers, as if you can smell your way out of organ failure. It's the 14th century equivalent of trying to fix a crashing computer by shouting at it. The church, your rock and your salvation, begins to crumble. You pray. Everyone prays. But the pestilence doesn't distinguish between the pious and the sinner. Priests, who dutifully give last rites to the dying, catch the sickness themselves and die in their own churches. The holy water fonts become petri dishes. The houses of God, packed with the desperate and the dying, become the most efficient infection centers imaginable. The original superspreader events, faith begins to curdle into a desperate, frantic fear. If God will not save his own shepherds, what hope is there for the sheep? Families, the very bedrock of your world, disintegrate. The fear of contagion is stronger than love, stronger than duty. Parents abandon their sick children. Husbands lock their wives in a room to die alone. The sick are walled up in their own homes, left with a bit of food and water, their desperate cries fading over the days. You look at your own loved ones, not with affection, but with suspicion. A cough, a sneeze, a complaint of a headache, it all becomes a potential threat. The person you shared a bed with last night might be the reason you're in a plague pit tomorrow.
Trust no one.
The daily routine of life simply ceases. The baker is dead, so there is no bread. The farmer is dead, so the fields lie fallow. The blacksmith is dead, so the tools can't be mended. The only booming business is coffin making. And soon enough, they can't keep up. The dead are piled in the streets. Carts rumble through the towns. The driver shouting, "Bring out your dead bodies," are tossed on, stiff and awkward, and hauled to massive, overflowing pits dug outside the city walls. There are no funerals, no rites, no dignity, just the grim, relentless logistics of disposal. This isn't a battle. A battle has sides, a strategy, a chance of victory. This is a reaping. The Black Death scythed through Europe with an efficiency that no army could ever match. It followed the trade routes. The very arteries that had made Europe rich now pumped poison through its body. From Italy, it climbed into France, across the Alps into the Holy Roman Empire. It crossed the Channel into England, and north into Scandinavia. It killed an estimated 30 to 50% of the entire continent's population. In some cities, the death toll was closer to 70%. Stop and try to imagine that. Walk down your street and picture half the houses empty. Go to your workplace and picture half your colleagues gone. Go to a family gathering where every other chair is vacant. It is a number so vast, so catastrophic, that it's almost impossible to comprehend. It was a world-altering event, a demographic cliff that Europe fell off of. And it was all helped along, given its devastating European debut, by one Khan's desperate act of rage and military innovation. Johnny Beg hadn't just wanted to conquer a city. In his fury, he had loaded a plague onto a catapult, lit the fuse on a pandemic, and in doing so, helped harvest a continent. And so, the harvest was complete. A continent tilled by trade routes and fertilized with fear was ready for its reaping. And the seed, the first terrible seed, was sown by a man who had simply run out of better ideas. This is perhaps the most unsettling part of the story. The Siege of Caffa, the act that may have flung open the doors of Europe to the Black Death, wasn't born from a moment of evil genius. It wasn't the culmination of a master plan. It was an act of pure, unfiltered desperation. It was a lesson, written not in ink, but in bone. Think of it from Johnny Beg's perspective. You're a Khan of the Golden Horde, a descendant of the most terrifying conquerors the world has ever known. Your entire cultural identity is built on victory. Sieges are your bread and butter. You show up, you starve them out. You take the city. It's a simple, effective business model. But Caffa isn't cooperating. The walls are too high, the defenders too stubborn, and worse, your own army, your instrument of unstoppable force, is dissolving around you. Your soldiers are not being cut down by arrows or boiling oil. They are turning black and collapsing in their tents, gasping for air that will not come. Your greatest asset has become your greatest liability. Every day, the burial pits grow wider. The smell of death is thicker than the smoke from the cooking fires. Morale is not just low, it has ceased to exist. Your campaign is a failure. Your authority is crumbling. You are a Mongol Khan, and you are losing to a sickness. It's humiliating. In that moment of utter crisis, you look at two things: the unbreachable walls of Caffa and the growing piles of your own plague-ridden dead. And in a spark of grotesque, furious innovation, you connect the two. If you cannot take their city, you will give them your plague. It was the medieval equivalent of rage-quitting a video game and unplugging the server on your way out. A final, spiteful act of a commander who knew he had been beaten, not by the enemy in front of him, but by the one inside him. This is the lesson of Caffa, etched into the skeletal remains of its victims. Human ingenuity is a double-edged sword, and it is never sharper than when it is wielded by desperation. We often think of warfare in terms of technology, sharper swords, stronger walls, more accurate bows. But the weapon used at Caffa required no new invention. It was simply a repurposed machine and a profound, terrifying understanding of contagion. They didn't know about time's Yersinia pestis asterisk. They didn't understand germ theory or the role of fleas, but they knew one simple, observable fact: sick people make other people sick. And in their desperation, they turned that basic, terrifying piece of folk wisdom into one of the most effective weapons of mass destruction in history. They weaponized nature itself. Nature, after all, is brutally indifferent. A plague, as no allegiance. It does not care about your flag, your god, or your quarterly profits. Its only goal is to replicate. Jani Beg simply gave it a new delivery system. He provided express shipping, and once unleashed, it could not be recalled. This act stands as a chilling prologue to the long, grim history of biological warfare. From armies flinging animal carcasses into wells to poison the water, to the apocryphal stories of smallpox-laden blankets being handed to Native Americans, the principle remains the same. The deadliest weapons are often not the ones we forge from steel, but the ones we harvest from the invisible world around us and aim at our enemies. It is a war fought not with soldiers, but with whispers, with fevers, with the body's own betrayal. Fighting an army you can see is terrifying enough. You can watch the arrows fly. You can brace for the cavalry charge. You can meet a sword with a shield. But how do you fight a foe you cannot see? How do you build a defense against something that drifts on the air, that hides in a sip of water, that sleeps in the fur of a rat, scurrying through your pantry? The defenders of Caffa were prepared for a siege of stone and steel. They were not prepared for a siege of microbiology. The horror was not just the sickness itself, but the paranoia it bred. Every cough from a neighbor becomes a threat. Every touch from a loved one A potential death sentence. The city's defenders, once united against the Mongols outside, were now atomized, isolated by a new fear of each other. The true siege was no longer outside the walls, but inside their own bodies and minds. The lesson is that the most effective way to break a society is not to knock down its walls, but to shatter the trust that holds it together from within. So as the story of Caffa fades, and the echoes of the Trebuchets grow quiet, we are left with this simple, chilling truth. The Black Death would likely have reached Europe eventually. The continent was a web of trade routes, a perfect transmission engine for a pandemic. But the desperate act of one frustrated Khan at one stubborn port city may well have been the lit match tossed into the powder keg. It was a catalyst, an accelerant born of human fury that gave the plague a horrifying head start. The story is a monument to the fact that our capacity for destruction is often only limited by our imagination and our desperation. And now, the noise of the past begins to soften. The cries from the walls of Caffa, the thump of the bodies, the creak of the refugee ships, it all recedes into a deep and distant quiet. The lesson, written in bone, has been read. It speaks of fear, of desperation, and of an enemy too small to see that could bring a world to its knees. It's a reminder that beneath the grand sweep of history, with its kings and its khans, are just people. People trapped by circumstances, making terrible choices, or simply trying to survive another day. The Mongol soldier, dying in his tent. The Genoese merchant, watching the sky. The dockworker in Sicily, unloading a cargo of unseen death. They are all quiet now. The fever has passed. The panic has subsided. The great silence has fallen over the 14th century, leaving only the soft whisper of a story to help you drift away. There are no more sieges tonight. The walls are safe. The air is clean. All that is left is the gentle pull of sleep. A quiet harbor after a long and turbulent journey. Sweet dreams.